Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Sunday's edition of the dceu Daily. Let's talk about Grace Randolph a little bit, because I really want to get into this Superman thing and these rumours about his representation or his lack thereof in the Flash movie. Now, right now, these are all rumours. So let's go back to some of the things that Grace Randolph said. Now, a lot of times I've got angry with Grace Randolph and she's blocked me on Twitter for it. The truth is, sometimes Grace says things we don't want to hear that may be true. So let's look at this. She said back in the day, back in 2019, she did a video, and we've spoken about this already, that they were going to use Wonder Woman 84 to incite some Flashpoint storyline where Diana does something to change the timeline. So not the Flashpoint kind of adaptation, but kind of a Flashpoint thing. As soon as she said this, there were reshoots. During Birds of Prey, she made another video saying they were using Ewan McGregor's black mask in a kind of derogatory way. So they were going to have him being this toxic male where there was this diamond with this hard drive in of Black Mask's private part. Reshoots happened straight away. Last year, an account on Twitter called My Time to Shine, and Grace Randolph agreed with this, by the way. They said that Henry Cavill had shot no new scenes for the Flash movie, and they were going to use old stock footage of Man of Steel. In terms of the narrative, it would be in terms of news footage, right? What's happened since My Time to Shine came out with this and Grace Randolph said this was true? We now have a delayed Flash movie. So we must conclude that Grace Randolph was right about Wonder Woman 84, that she was right about Birds of Prey, because we saw the reactions to what happened as soon as she reported these things. And now we have a delayed Flash movie. VFX? Like fuck, it's VFX. We know what's going on here. So we can also surmise that Toby Emmerich and Warner Brothers Pictures were quite happy not to have Henry Cavill in the Flash movie and use stock footage so that nobody can say, where's Henry? Where's our Superman? How stupid do you think we are? You must think we're very, very stupid. Well, we're not. We wouldn't have accepted this. My Time to Shine and Grace Randolph also said that Batgirl would be replacing Batman, and Supergirl, played by Sasha Calle, would be replacing Superman. Batgirl and Supergirl are characters in their own rights. They don't get to replace other characters, and when you do that, you're not representing positive women, you're not using women as positive role models, you're saying they can replace the men. Wouldn't it be better to have Batgirl and Batman together? You're doing it with Keaton and Batgirl over in the Batgirl film. Clearly, they're going to share some scenes, surely. So why is it different when we get to a Flashpoint movie? It's bad enough that it's not even a real Flashpoint adaptation, and they're using this Flash movie to reboot the franchise. Now, something at the time I was very excited about, because I thought they had pure reasons for doing it. You know, they can see that the DCEU has been problematic. The DCEU isn't problematic because of Zack Snyder, David F. Sandberg, David Ayer, and all the wonderful creatives that have made films within it. It's the people who run the DCEU from behind the scenes that have been the problem. And that includes Walter Hamada, who's a very clever producer, but knows jack shit about DC Comics and has probably never picked up a DC comic in his life. Should I tell you who has picked up many DC comics in his life? Henry Cavill actually researched the character he was going to play for Man of Steel. So nobody at that studio knows Superman more than Henry Cavill. So what happened? He was a great Superman in Man of Steel. Even if you don't like that film, you like Henry Cavill. So how did we get to the situation where Henry was just not going to be in the Flash movie and they were just going to use old stock Man of Steel footage in that movie? How did we get there? Man of Steel is a great movie. I rewatched it yesterday. It's such a great movie, both visually. But what people don't talk about Man of Steel is it has some wonderful character moments and wonderful quiet moments. It's got this really nice relationship between Clark and Lois. The moment in the desert before the Kryptonians come to pick Superman up, when he thanks her for believing in him. Those beautiful moments between Henry Cavill and Diane Lane. I don't know how Snyder does it, but every piece of casting he does is without question so on the money. Diane Lane should have got a supporting Oscar nom for her performance in Man of Steel. So good. I mean, I've always loved Annette O'Toole as Martha Kent in Smallville, but I have to say, Diane Lane is my best live action Martha Kent. And there's so many great character moments. People talk about Snyder about being, so, obsessed with the visuals and explosions and action. And there's all of that. And if that isn't your thing, then you don't have to watch this movie. But also, Snyder does implement some wonderful character moments within Man of Steel. The moment that disabled Man of Steel was watching Superman. Not for me, I wasn't triggered by Superman killing. But you could not have Superman breaking somebody's neck. Not only did they have him kill the villain, but they had him break his neck. David Goyer, whose idea this was actually, and this is another thing that's wrong, poor Zack Snyder, didn't have the idea for Superman to kill. Now, I'm sure Snyder was fine with it because his Batman also kills, but not in such a way like breaking somebody's neck. It was an outrageous thing to do because it was obvious it was going to be controversial. And Goyer clearly did this to use controversy to sell the movie. What happened because of that moment? People didn't go back to watch the movie. They didn't rewatch the movie because many, many families couldn't sit there with their children and have them watch Superman break somebody's neck. It's illogical. And I love this argument, and I quote-tweeted someone who was kind of defending the killing of Zod. And I'll tell you why, for many reasons, why it's such a stupid decision in a minute. They said Superman kills in the comics. Now, I don't know the Superman comics so well to sit here now and tell you that's not true. But the way they say it is like Superman kills in every page of the DC comics. And even I know that's not true. So if Superman's inadvertently killed in the comics before, or he's killed in Red Sun when he's not the Superman we know and love and he's a different Superman, that's different. You can't use that. But whatever, right? The point being, it was the wrong decision. Because if Superman doesn't kill Zod in that movie, people go back and watch it. And it makes over $1 billion. I assure you, I promise you, as an analyst of entertainment, because I speak to people, not because I know more than the average geek on earth, I assure you, if Superman doesn't kill Zod, and in such an aggressive way, and he's not put in that impossible situation, because for years people were defending that moment via the narrative where he didn't have any choice, and that's right, because David Goyer didn't give him any choice. He could have given him a choice. There were many reasons and ways that you could have dealt with General Zod and what happens to him at the end of the movie. You could have had him sucked through the black hole, as they call it, the kind of, the Phantom Zone, like the rest of the Kryptonians in the end of the film, right? You could have depowered him using blue kryptonite and put him, in a lead prison. We know lead affects Kryptonians, right? We know that. So there were so many ways of dealing with Zod. Now, for me, and this is a hot take, by the way, Michael Shannon's General Zod is the best comic book movie supervillain of all time. Even better than Heath Ledger's turn as the Joker. And I know many people won't agree with that, but that's just my opinion. Let's look at General Zod and Shannon's performance in that film. So the idea of this Zod is that in the past, he was the hero of Krypton, right? He was the protector. He was the hero. This guy, like many Kryptonians at that time, were bred to do a certain role, as Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, explains to Clark when they meet for the first time. So Zod doesn't really have much choice in who and what he is. It's bred into him because they're clones. So his role is to be the protector of Krypton. And Shannon plays it in such a way, it's written in such a way that he takes this role literally. So this guy will do anything to protect his people. He pretty much tells Superman that in a part of Man of Steel. So once upon a time, literally General Zod was Superman for the people of Krypton. But then he saw the corruption within the Kryptonian Council. So he creates this coup because he sees it's going wrong. He agrees with Jor-El as he tells Superman the only thing we agreed on, that Krypton was dying. So he can see that because this Zod is quite intelligent. This isn't a Zod, and as much as I love Terrence Stabb's Zod in Superman 2, he's not just saying, bow, kneel. This guy has this morality that he is the only person who can protect his people. And so it's a brilliant arc, and he comes to Earth to change it via the world engine. So basically we've got this codex thing, we've got these million Kryptonian cells inside Superman. So he wants to extract these so it can become a new Krypton, if you like. So this guy has got a proper arc in this movie, and it's great. And this is why I believe he's better than Ledger's Joker, because Ledger's Joker is great, but he doesn't really, Ledger's Joker is great in the sense that his mission is to prove that everyone's as bad as he is, right? And nobody's got morality. Ultimately, what Nolan does in the end is show that people can be good. And I like that. It's a good arc. But I just think Michael Shannon's Zod is so good. And to kill that and say we can never see him again apart from as a corpse in Batman versus Superman was wrong. And one of the rumors was that Shannon's Zod was going to be in the Flash movie. Clearly, they've already shot those scenes. Wow. Can't wait to see them if we ever do. So the idea was within Flashpoint that they were going to change elements of Man of Steel to have Zod still be alive and just be sucked into the Phantom Zone. Probably what should have happened, from the very beginning. But here's the thing, and this is the thing I'd like to say to the people at Warner Brothers Pictures. You can't shine shit, right? You can't change things. If you don't like the fact that Zod was killed, like me, you've already done Justice League. You've already embarrassed yourselves as a studio, as a motion picture company, by putting out a film that should never have been put out because you're so reactive. Going back and bringing Zod back, you're messing with somebody's film, with somebody's vision. You're changing something. It doesn't matter that I don't think it was a good idea for Superman to break Zod's neck. Never as a Warner Brothers executive would I have the cojones in a Flash movie to go back into somebody else's movie and change what they did. You can't do it. Because the fact remains, everyone, that they're just digging themselves a deep hole. And the Flash movie is an even deeper shovel of shit. After Justice League, as I said, I would have brought the DC Extended Universe, or that version of it, to an end and started again. But what they wanted to do was create a Flashpoint movie to change things and, so they don't have to use certain actors. We still don't know what their plans would be for Batfleck. Some people say he doesn't die. I think he vanishes. Who knows? The future of Batfleck and Henry Cavill's Superman has been, something we've been questioning since we saw Justice League. We knew it was game over for those versions of Batman and Superman once we saw Justice League. That movie really made an informed decision that the DCEU should just die. Because once you drive Snyder away and you say you don't finish your arc, you should basically say, do you know what? If we don't let him finish this, we should bring the whole thing to an end. And I know Hollywood don't like to admit their mistakes because they're never wrong. They never do anything wrong. They never break a rule. They never break a law. And they want us to be seen as these compassionate and kind and forgiving people. And we know that they're not. They're the most toxic people on the planet. But all they had to do, when they drove Snyder out, or even after Justice League, which was such an embarrassment, but it shouldn't have even got to Justice League. After BVS, they should have just said, we're bringing this to a close, right? or even after Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was a great ending. In fact, if they were smart, they could have killed the DCEU after Suicide Squad and said, listen, because of creative differences, Zack Snyder won't be involved with the DCEU any longer. And Wonder Woman 2017 could have been their first movie. The problem with that is, the reason Wonder Woman 2017 is such a great movie is because of Zack Snyder. And here lies the problem. The truth of the matter is, whether you like what Snyder did or not, and it's the studio's fault and Christopher Nolan's fault from the beginning for bringing an auteur director who doesn't make content for the mainstream, but makes films very stylish and, you know, makes commentary in different ways about society. Just like in BVS, when the Senate building or whatever you call it, it explodes. It's pretty much a terrorist act to set up Superman. It's very similar to what happened when Trump supporters went out, do you remember? It's like Snyder was predicting the future. So Snyder was creating something amazing. And whether you liked it or not, it should have been allowed to be finished. But when they decide that they don't want to use him anymore, that means his DCEU needed to properly die. Not keep on limping on and on and on. Look where we are now. So just like what they did with BVS, taking half an hour off, just like what they did to poor David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie, which I still want to see the haircut, they got a pop video company to edit the movie, and there were some reshoots. I still don't know who did those reshoots, if it was David or another director. That's confusing to me. So they messed with those movies, right? Wonder Woman 2017 went through several changes. It was going to be a more connective tissue to Snyder's arc, but it's a wonderful movie. And as I've always said, one of the best CBMs I've ever seen. So then you think, well, at the end of Wonder Woman 2017, you think, wow, well, this Justice League movie is going to be special. I can't wait. Little did we know, they weren't going to go forward with Snyder's vision. So as I say, once you decide not to do that, you've got to bring the whole thing to a close, abruptly, unfortunately, if you're that reactive, and say, right, because of creative differences, we're not going forward with the DCEU. We are going to start again from scratch as soon as we can. It hasn't worked. We're going to create a DC Studios because we realise, because we're clever people, even though they're not, that we need to do this. We need to put the best people at DC Studios who know these wonderful characters, who have got, the priority of these characters at heart and the fans at heart, and put someone in charge from the comic book company who can produce, who understands how to produce motion pictures, but understands these characters as well. You just bring someone in. Now, obviously, you've got, and I forgot his name now, that's it, Bruce Timm. Thank God I remembered his name. It wouldn't have worked otherwise, this conversation. But anyway, Bruce Timm is basically I think he's the president of the dceu, the DC Animated Universe. And what a wonderful job he's done. Now, the dceu has some wonderful animated movies. It has some middling and mediocre ones. But it's a great universe within its own right. The MCU has great movies and middling and mediocre movies as well. That's what a connective franchise does. Not every movie can be epic, but every movie makes lots of money. And that's the thing about the DCEU. So Bruce Timm is a genius. So once they realised they didn't want to go forward with Snyder, cut it down, bring in Bruce Timm, who actually is a great producer, a great storyteller, and would have been a great DC movies president. No. Instead, they drove Snyder off. They went to Walter Hamada, who they'd already had a relationship with and were tight with, because New Line Cinema is a Warner Brothers company, and Walter Hamada was basically running the horror movie division and did a really good job with that, but knows jack shit about DC. So I think he was working with them unofficially from 2017 onwards, but they won't admit that. I think Walter Hamada may even have a credit at the end of the Aquaman movie, if I remember rightly. I'll have to check that again. And so they made another mistake. So what happens is, after Justice League, they make Aquaman, a really good movie. It references like Steppenwolf, and that's it. But it's a really good movie, and it works. Shockingly, it makes $1 billion. Wow, you've got a win after Justice League. Nobody should even be trusting you after Justice League, but James Wan turned it around. Wow. And then you do Shazam, another great movie, but there's another issue here brewing. And that is that we get a body double to play Henry Cavill's Superman. And the problem is, the film itself has this narrative where Freddie Freeman is obsessed with superheroes, especially Batman and Superman, but especially Superman. So there needs to be this moment. That moment when Superman turns up at the school in the mess hall is important for Freddie Freeman's arc. So David F. Sandberg told the fans on Twitter that basically Cavill was going to do it, but there were scheduling problems. Now, I don't know if this is true. I think if Henry Cavill is in that film, just in that moment, it would have been amazing. Amazing, because make no mistake, whatever the propaganda merchants say, Shazam is a great film for families, for children and their parents to watch together. And having Superman just feature in that moment would have been fine. But again, they made people angry by using a body double. And even the costume you could tell it wasn't Henry. It was a shame, but it works for Freddie Freeman's arc. And I think David had no choice but to do that. And David, I think, takes it personally when people are angry about Cavill not being there. It's not David's fault. It's the studio's fault, or whatever was going on. Maybe it was scheduled. From that moment, there's a problem, a huge problem. Because we know the studio and Cavill have issues. Now, again, Grace Randolph told us that Henry Cavill's a bit of a diva and wants more money. Now, I've never believed this about the money thing, but let's just say the money thing's true. Doesn't he deserve to be getting top dollar for playing Superman? In Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, he gets less money than Ben Affleck. You're going to say, well, Ben Affleck is more famous, blah, 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 but he's playing Superman. People loved him, despite a lot of people not liking Man of Steel. People still, despite that, loved Cavill as Superman, and he became Superman for the people who loved Man of Steel and the people who didn't like Man of Steel. That's mad, isn't it? That's amazing. So you pay him what he's worth. Why isn't there no problems with Netflix and Cavill? Why is he back for multiple seasons? And Cavill can be a pain in the arse in terms of his knowledge of The Witcher. He keeps on telling them sometimes that they should be doing this instead of that. And actually they listen to him because he does know things. He's just a passionate nerd. We know that. But he wants more money. He should get more money. And if it was a money thing, that could be fixed just like that, let's be honest. I don't think he's asking for anything outrageous, do you? He doesn't come across as that kind of a person. But from the moment he wasn't in Shazam, the problems began. And then, during, the Justice League problem with the facial hair was because he was doing Mission Impossible Fallout and he had facial hair. Anyway, he and the director had a pitch for Superman. They took it to WB. It was rejected straight off the bat. Okay, you didn't like that pitch. Maybe, because we don't know what the pitch is, and maybe one day Henry will tell us that, but they didn't like the pitch. So why didn't they say, okay, Henry, and to the director, whose name I forgot, sit with us, and let's come up for a great pitch for a Man of Steel sequel? No. You know what they did after Justice League? They decided via media outlets like Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter to tell us they were resting Superman. A connective universe, a shared universe, whose first film was a Superman film, and they were resting Superman. Why? They rejected a pitch, right, for a Superman film from the Superman actor and a very good respected director in the industry, and they said, we're resting Superman. People are not interested in Superman. If you really think that people are not interested in Superman, you don't understand. If you're one of those people who believes that Superman isn't relatable, you don't understand, and you have not been paying attention. The reason that Superman's fortunes in motion picture are so inconsistent is because the studio itself has never understood Superman. Explain this to me. Superman the movie is a mammoth of a movie. It worked, right? Because it came at a moment when people were fed up of reality-based films and putting characters in the real world, like Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. Superman the movie comes straight after Star Wars, where people just wanted escapism. Vietnam had just finished. People were so depressed with the real world. They needed an escape. That's why the MCU works, because people need and escape, to think of these Marvel characters that they love, these great, iconic characters. That's why the MCU works. And so then Superman 2 is a good film, but again, a Justice League scenario happened. They sacked Richard Donner, the man who created this wonderful Superman movie, because he didn't get on with the producers because they were interfering and they wanted it done at a lower budget, and they sacked him. But unlike Justice League, Superman 2 is an excellent movie. Richard Lester, the guy who replaced him, did a brilliant job. I do like that film. But here's the thing. The Richard Donner and Salkind situation is connected to where we are with Superman motion pictures today. Because Dick Donner and Tom Mankiewicz, who actually rewrote the Superman the movie and actually did a great job, their idea, and Richard Donner said this, that they were thinking of making 4 or 5 Superman movies. So if Dick isn't sacked after Superman the movie and Tom doesn't leave with him out of loyalty because they were friends and Dick brought Tom on, if they don't leave and they make 5 Superman movies, and I've mentioned this before in a video titled How Hollywood Let Down Superman, or whatever it is, right? I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. If they made those 5 movies, which would have been excellent, right? And I think Dick Donner wanted to make his own Supergirl movie as well. So if they stayed on, we wouldn't have had that Supergirl movie. We would have had an even better one. I have a soft spot for Helen Slater's Supergirl movie. I think Janet Swark, who directed a wonderful film, it had problems, but I love it, warts and all. But, so add another 5 Superman films, including a Supergirl film, and then you could have had crossovers, and lots of things could have happened. Dick Donner and Tom Mankiewicz would have been making Superman media, right? Live action Superman media probably till 2000, 2001. And then probably Tom and Dick would have retired. And then Dick could have chosen someone else to carry on this Superman universe. Think about that. Where would we be with Superman today? Superman would be the #1 live action character, and he'll be the #1 comics book character. Why did Batman become #1? It's because of the live action media. That's what helped it, right? The Dark Knight was another reason Batman's so popular today, right? I mean, Batman's always been popular, and even before Superman the movie, I mean, he took over Superman as #1 kind of comic book character. I understand he's a very relatable character. Superman is relatable, you just have to understand him. There's comic books where you read, where you understand that the author and the artist understand this character, and there's some comic books that you think these people don't even want to understand Superman. They're just going through the motions. Bryan Singer didn't understand Superman. He just wanted to kiss Richard Donner's forehead and say, wow, thank you. Superman the movie is excellent. Here's a love letter. Superman Returns. Which isn't a bad movie, but the movie doesn't understand Superman. And it doesn't even understand Superman the movie and Superman 2, because it's not even a great continuation of those 2 movies. So that's where the tragedy began with Superman live action. If Dick Donner wasn't sacked by the Salkinds, we would be in a much better position now. Superman's my character. He's been my favourite superhero and my favourite fictional character since I was a 10, 11-year-old boy, whatever I was when I first saw Superman the movie. And that love for him goes on because he's so pure and he's so good. And I mean, let's talk about Man of Steel a little bit. I know I'm rambling today. There's not many updates anyway. We will get to the Batman's box office and talk about that in a moment. Let's talk about Man of Steel, because a bit like the Batman, Man of Steel does an interesting thing where Henry Cavill is more Superman than Clark Kent. Because at the beginning of the movie, after the origin on Krypton, we see him on the ship or the docks or whatever. We see Clark being superheroic. We see him traveling the world, looking for his origins, which he does, and he meets Jor-El, and he becomes Superman. Then he's Clark for a little bit longer. And then once Zod comes, he's Superman for the whole movie. I think we can say he's Superman more than Clark in this movie. Now, the difference between what Matt does and what Zack does, he does try and have a little bit more of Clark Kent. But there's definitely more Superman than Clark Kent. And some people were disappointed in Man of Steel because we didn't get much of Clark in the Daily Planet, apart from a very, very good ending. A very good ending, actually. It was very light-hearted, brilliant, and a great introduction to the future of Clark's life at the Daily Planet with Perry, you know, and Lois, and it looked like a great future. I don't understand, and this is obvious part of the change of Goya not writing BVS, but it was a lot different in the Daily Planet with Clark and Perry. I mean, I love the dynamic between Clark and Perry. It was very interesting. But it looked like David Goyer was going more for a light-hearted approach with the kind of demo between the characters, you know, in the Daily Planet. But there's definitely more Superman than Clark Kent in Man of Steel. And there's another thing I want to talk about Man of Steel, and it's the relationship between Kevin Costner's Jonathan. Kevin Costner, if nobody knows, is one of my favourite actors, if not my favourite actor of all time. I idolised that bloke in my younger years, in my 20s, actually from the age of 18, 19. I love so many of his films. But there's a situation going, there's a power struggle between Jonathan Kent and Clark Kent, even in the flashbacks, when he's not played by Henry. It's the idea that Clark wants to use his powers for good, but Jonathan wants to hide him on the farm. And it's interesting when we get to that tornado sequence, and when they're in the car, and Jonathan is trying to get him to be a farmer, and Clark doesn't want to be a farmer. And then Clark says this terrible thing, "You're not my father." And then he regrets it quickly afterwards. Because Jonathan still, even though Clark's a young adult now, and kudos to Henry Cavill, who puts a younger accent on for Clark. Brilliant. What an actor. What a performance in that movie. Henry Cavill's got great quality. So even though Clark's a young adult at this time, he still wants Clark to hide away who he is. But something amazing happens in that tornado sequence, because Jonathan inadvertently shows Clark that he does need to use his powers for good. Jonathan shows an example of him holding somebody else's child, a person he doesn't know. He's telling everyone to get into the underpass or whatever it is. Jonathan is being the hero of the moment. And then a much derived moment when Jonathan goes back to get the dog from the car, and people say, as you go back for the dog, I'm not a dog owner. I'm not a friend of dogs. In fact, I'm scared of dogs. But I know dog owners. Dog owners would do anything for their dog, and they would go back. Most dog owners, if you're a dog owner, comment down below. You would go back for your dog. But anyway, at this moment, when he's trapped in the car and he gets out, Clark is about, literally, in his expression, is offering to save him, and Jonathan says, no. Jonathan shows a perfect example of what a hero should be. A quiet, working-class man. Nobody will know in that moment when Jonathan is blown away by the tornado that he made the ultimate sacrifice. But Clark knows. Martha knows. Clark knows that his father sacrificed his own life so his son wouldn't become a lab rat. All those years, Jonathan was trying to protect his son and encourage him to hide who he was. But at that moment, Jonathan demonstrated what a true hero is. And this can go for real life. The heroes aren't the actors or the sports stars or the people paid to save people's lives. The real heroes are out there every day and you don't see them. These are people who would jump in front of a bullet for you, who've got no training, but will never be in the media. There's heroes, and there's different types of heroes. There's charity workers trying to get money to Ukraine and Ethiopia every day. We don't know their names. These are heroes. And Jonathan and via Snyder and Goya, and it's really David Goya here, who demonstrates what a true hero should be. And that's what's great about Man of Steel. And there's another perfect illustrated moment, and it's between Jor-El and Zod. Well, Jor-El and Zod have clearly been friends in the past, because there's this moment when he goes, you know, I'm going to honour the person you once was, but not this monster you've become. So clearly, they were once friends, and that's clear. And there's an element in Shannon's performance, this is why I think he's better than Ledger, by the way, when he destroys the chip that is showing Jor-El near the end of the movie. And he wants to hurt him, and he's saying, I'm going to literally rip the codex out of your son's dead body and build this new world on top of his bones, right? But ultimately, and this is a great moment that proves they were friends, when he destroys the only way he can talk to his friend, there's regret in Michael Shannon's face. Zod has regret in his eyes. And I think it's so good to have this villain, who's a villain. He's killing people, he's doing bad things, but he literally loved Jor-El. But because he was born with no choice but to do anything to protect his civilization, he will even sacrifice his own friend, even when he kills Jor-El in the beginning of the movie. And you see the regret in Shannon's eyes. And he tells Superman, he kind of regrets it all the time, but he still would have done the same thing. Shannon Zod deserved to go on in this franchise, but they just did a cheap thing of killing him off. So this is what I think about the Superman situation and where it's all gone so wrong that we get a situation in the Flash movie that all we was going to get was old stock footage. So now something has to happen here. I said yesterday, I'm very convinced that Henry Cavill will be in Black Adam in Shazam Fury of the Gods. So you're saying to me, Mick, why would he be in those two movies, but why would they use old stock footage in the Flash? That's a very good question. You should always question your YouTubers, even though I'm a very honest and genuine YouTuber. It's good to question us, right? Keeps us honest. The Rock Johnson's company, production company, represents The Rock and Henry Cavill. So they had an advantage here to get Henry for these two movies. And, you know, The Rock has got more of a creative arm and authority with Shazam and Black Adam. And that's why I believe Henry's definitely in Shazam Fury of the Gods, and fingers crossed will appear in Black Adam as well. So the whole situation is an absolute tragedy. And you know what's worse? It's an avoidable tragedy. Well, we were discussing the box office for a long time prior to release of the Batman, and I said to you on my lives and on my videos when you were asking me about box office predictions, I wasn't going to get too excited about the huge opening until we got to the second weekend and to see if it could hold. I was confident that it could hold, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to make a monkey of myself. But it has held very, very well. I think about 48%, which is an amazing hold because the average is about 55 to 65. BVS record-breaking opening, about 78 in some quarters drop-off. That was a disastrous drop-off, and it proves people didn't like the movie from the mainstream audience. Well, this movie's success and its hold domestically is sensational. It now has 400 million internationally and globally. That's amazing. But I'll tell you why that's amazing. Because of the criticism from the critics, or some of them, that it's too long and too dark. What people have said to the critics and Hollywood and Warner Brothers in general, get me more of that. Yes, it's dark, but we don't think it's too dark. Yes, it's long, but we don't think it's too long. We like this. It doesn't mean every movie has to be realistic and stemmed in reality. It means people like this. If people are willing to sit their butts down for 3 hours, and it's got such a good hold, that tells you something. And it's interesting to me when Toby Emmerich spoke about the shorter versions of the movie not testing as well. Well, I'll tell you why, because you were cutting portions of the man's vision out. And, you know, it would have been regrettable if it did test better than the 3-hour one. That would have been a disappointment. But in terms of this, they've learned their lesson. But the truth is, Toby Emmerich's taking credit for the 3-hour release being put out there, but it's not down to him. Because if he didn't release the 3-hour version and he released the 2.5-hour version, like he did with BVS, right, instead of the 3-hour Ultimate Edition of BVS, Reeves would have walked. That's where Snyder and Reeves are different. Snyder was willing to prolong the problem because Snyder was determined to get his way. But Reeves would have just said, you know, I've come to you from the beginning and said, listen, it's your IP, you can do what you want with it. But if you don't do what I want to do with it, we just can't work together, which is fair enough, right? So this is not because of Toby Emmerich. If Toby Emmerich had a director that he just appointed with, you know, a low reputation in the industry, they would have cut this film. They would have loved to have cut this film. But what these numbers prove is, because this is why studios don't like long movies, and it's because this is the reason why Justice League was ordered by Kevin Sugihara to be just under 2 hours. More showings. The shorter a film is, the more viewings you get. So what's amazing here is that this 3-hour movie is getting the same amount of viewings. I know you can't put as many, right, because it's 3 hours, but people are coming back all the time. It's kind of, the analysis is that even if this film was 2 hours, it would have got no more views. The extra hour is not putting people off. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is amazing. I would foresee now that it's a foregone conclusion, unless an impending disaster comes, that this film will get at least $800 to $1 billion at the global box office. I think $1 billion is incoming. It's not tracking the same way as Spider-Man No Way Home. Neither should it. It's not a disaster for that. Spider-Man No Way Home comes from a long-running franchise, and they brought the other two iconic versions of Spider-Man with the new version. You know, it's the same way when you have, you know, kind of the 5 Doctors in Doctor Who, or when you had the Day of the Doctor and David Tennant and Matt Smith's Doctor crossed over. More people were watching it. They even released it in cinemas, right? Huger event. So the Batman, for an original franchise, has done so well. And when you look at other Batman movies, for example, Batman 89 made a lot of money. And if you bring into context of today's numbers and everything, and how many screens we've got, and with IMAX and social media, Batman 89 would have made around the same money as the Batman. Batman Returns made slightly less, but did okay. But it was a more controversial movie, a lot darker, and some people didn't like it. But it's a great movie. It's one of my favourite Batman movies. Now, Batman Forever made good, solid box office. I think it actually made more than Batman Returns. Now, Batman and Robin is an official flop, and so you have that. And then Batman Begins barely made, I think, 400 million at the global box office. So obviously, the Batman's cleared that already. But it's not a fair comparison, because Batman Begins came after Batman and Robins. So there was a hangover from that, and people didn't have faith in live-action Batman anymore. Batman Begins is a fine movie. And obviously The Dark Knight grossed over $1 billion. It's an interesting list if you have a look at it. So it's a huge success for the Batman. The Batman is a brilliant movie made by a brilliant director. And he led this narrative, and he made sure the studio didn't mess around with him. The problem is with people like, it's interesting actually, you would think someone like David F. Sandberg would be a pushover. He fought for all those Snyderverse Easter eggs to be in the Shazam movie, because we've never had Easter eggs like that in a DCEU movie. That's him. So Sandberg's a really funny guy. And just before I go, because we're done talking about the Batman now, huge success, brilliant film, loved it. Let's talk about David F. Sandberg, who's talking a lot more about Shazam! Fury of the Gods. They've obviously sent him out to do so. So hopefully we don't ask certain questions. So he tweeted saying, no, it's not referenced in Shazam! Fury of the Gods why they've updated their costumes. And he goes, that's what's so great about having magic in your movie. And it's true. Why? I don't think that should be a nitpick. There's magic, the magic, Shazam, the wizard, or whatever, right? Because I think, is he dead, the wizard? No, I don't know anyone. Basically, the magic decided to upgrade the costumes, and it's fine. No big deal. Here's the problem for me. Shazam! Fury of the Gods was going to come after Flashpoint. In fact, David F. Sandberg joked he was going to use the Flashpoint thing as an excuse for the upgraded costumes. So I asked him, I said, and he hasn't replied, and he won't reply, because he can't say it. It's above his pay grade. David, your film was going to be released after Flashpoint, and now it's been released before Flashpoint. And I think somebody somewhere needs to answer about this. And of course, I didn't get a response, and I'm not going to. But how effective, how huge was this reboot and this Flashpoint going to be if Aquaman now can come before the Flash, and so can Shazam? That doesn't make sense. That means Aquaman and Shazam! Fury of the Gods were never going to reference Flashpoint, which means it wasn't going to reboot everything, which means it wasn't going to reboot Shazam. It's obvious, isn't it? It wasn't going to reboot James Wan's Aquaman universe, it was only going to reboot certain things. You can't have a Flashpoint scenario where some things come out unscathed and things that you don't like creatively or because you have problematic relationships with actors and directors get changed. I think it's clear to me that the Flash movie probably isn't a huge mess in terms of the character of the Flash and Barry Allen, but I think it's a mess in how it handles Flashpoint and how it handles only rebooting elements of the DCEU. And someone at that studio, or Zaslav and Discovery, have said, no, this cannot happen. So but this is the interesting thing now, because if they go back and redo the Flash movie or do some reshoots, right, and Shazam, Fury of the Gods and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom don't reference Flashpoint, and that's why they can be before that movie, it's obvious. I think they're going to abolish the multiverse strategy. Now, I could be wrong here, by the way, because one of the directors of Batgirl put up some artwork of the different Batmen. Really, really cool. So it looks like they're doing that movie, and that movie will be released on HBO Max. So that will tell you that Flashpoint is happening. I'm really, really, really confused right now. And if I'm confused, you're a YouTuber, you must be really fucking confused. Is Flashpoint a thing? What does Flashpoint affect Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Well, it can't do if they swap the order in where those movies come. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Of course, there's another way of doing it, saying that actually Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom are actually set after Flashpoint, and that's kind of, I suppose, I don't know the word for it, just to say this is what's going to happen, and they're in that world now. See how that happens in the Flash movie. But I very much doubt it. I think my first guess is right, that Shazam 2 and Aquaman 2 are not affected by Flashpoint, which I think we always knew, because Shazam and the first Aquaman movie did very, very well. So they're only affecting movies and situations that didn't do well. That's interesting, isn't it? We won't know if the Flash movie is being reshot for 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think. They're going to let the dust settle, then creep and start doing reshoots, and hoping we won't notice. Unfortunately, they don't know the consumer very well, do they? This has been Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you in the next video, or maybe I'll see you when I'm live, whenever. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.